try to demystify Aphellian for you guys. I've seen a bunch of tutorials and nobody's really done anything comprehensive. So Aphellian is a 5-track sequencer if you count the drums as 1 track, and 4 synth parts. It can trigger internal synths, and it can also trigger external synths or drum modules. I've seen a lot of complaints that people can't get the drums to work, so I'll start there. So let's see, we have an instance of Aphellian, and then an instance of Vatnator. And if you heard my voice change, it's because I had to overdub a little bit here. Now in Vatnator, if you just hit the MIDI learn button, it shows you the note assignments. And there's a place in Aphellian where you can change each of those values for the 6 or 8 drums that are there. And here's how I have the routing matrix for MIDI set up in AUM. So now we're going to go over to Aphellian, and then on the very top is where all the controls are. And we're going to go to the mixer page. And you'll notice on the track where it says drums, I have the volume all the way turned down so that the internal drums are now playing. At the top of the mixer page, there are 2 tabs, one called audio, one called MIDI. We're switching over to MIDI, and then that's where you turn on the MIDI drums. So there's a switch right there. It says drums on off. And I'm going to switch over to the drum machine real quick. There's a MIDI page where I make sure that Aphellian is assigned. And then I go back and I hit play. So on the right, you'll notice it says drum channel note. Each of those is assigned a value on the keyboard that's supposed to match up with the drum machine, and they generally don't match up. So whether you do it by listening with your ear one at a time, or whether you look in the drum machine and find a place where it tells you what the note values are, you have to figure out how to make those numbers match what the note assignments are in the drum machine. So when it came to assigning the 4th pad, the note number, even though I made it line up, I hit MIDI learn and I copied the value over, which was A sharp 6 or A6, and I went up to it and nothing happened. So Vatnator has a MIDI learn function, but since Aphellian's drum machine doesn't have any pads, I had to go back and turn off all of the notes except for the one that I wanted it to learn, and just place 1 note at the very beginning. And then using the MIDI learn function, I assigned the pad that Aphellian, or the value that Aphellian wanted to send. And it picked it up, and then everything was lined up. So either way, that's what you got to do. You have to line everything up. You have to go through the process of making sure that the Aphellian will trigger the same notes of your drum machine. So I'm going to skip ahead. So next we're going to cover the orbits, and we're going to start with a single orbit, the blue one in the top right corner. And I'm going to show you how to alter it and customize it. The default shape is a circle, and it revolves over a pitch map. So I've decided to stop and freeze the video so I can explain their pitch map idea a little bit better. Imagine a wind chime that defies gravity. And instead of going flat from left to right, it goes in a circle. If you were to stroke your finger around it in a circle, you would hit several different notes on the way around. And on some of the circular pitch maps, you can actually see they've put the notes on there. So now if you were to put another shape over that, let's say a circle 8, instead of hitting notes in succession, they would go up and down. Now the main reason you're only hearing 3 notes instead of the whole gambit is because at the very bottom there's a little keyboard that limits the amount of notes that it will play. So that kind of keeps things in range, and there's a slider on another screen that lets you decide how many octaves to go up. In this case, there's only one note on one ring, so you definitely need a different shape or different rings to hear different notes. So that's a different way of distributing the notes on a key map. Then there are key maps that go up and down, and it's the same thing. When I close the key map screen, there's that slider I was talking about on the left. It'll pop back up again when we go back to that screen, and you'll see that that limits the amount of octaves that you can go up or down, so you can keep the phrase inside of a certain range of notes. So let's say you want to do only bass notes, or you want it to be in the mid-range, or you want it to be a very high part, because parts can definitely easily step on each other if you keep them all in the same range. So I'll show you in a minute. Now I've kept it on this shape here on purpose. If you notice, the outside ring stays on this particular key map on one note, and it just varies. And then when it goes on the inside circle, it hits a few other notes. That's only possible because of the shape. Now you may notice that each of these shapes has these little lines in them. Well, those are basically the subdivisions. They could be quarter notes, whole notes, 16th notes, but you will notice that whenever the orbit goes around and hits those particular markers, definitely certain notes will be triggered right on those markers. It's possible there will be some notes in between as well, depending on how you have it subdivided, which is based on the little note value. Now I've frozen it here so you can see this particular pitch map. Each circle represents a note, and this particular shape, like I said, has mostly one note that's being played in different rhythmic variations. The longer lines, for instance, on the right, there are longer note divisions rhythmically. The shorter ones are quicker notes. So those are rhythmic variations. So basically, it's taking the standard way of playing notes linear out of the equation, and the standard way of doing rhythm, instead of doing it linear, it's doing it in a circle. But it ends up still working. And then there's the slider on the left that I was talking about. And here, in the mixer column, all of these sliders are underneath the keyboards. And you see that on top there's a blue keyboard range. I've made it have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes instead of the 3 notes or 2 notes that it usually has. And then if you extend that, you can hear how the ranges change. So each one of these keyboards represents an orbit. And now lastly, there's a in the middle it says generator, and you can see the letter C, and it says minor because I switch it to minor. And that allows you to either switch all the orbits to the same key, minor, major, or harmonic minor. You'll watch that whenever it hits one of those sections, it'll play a different note. In the bottom center, you can see where it says apply to. If you push the center of that little color thing, Simon Says thing, it says all, or you can hit any individual color and you can change any one orbit to the key that you want. So that's if you go too far out with your selections and you just want everything to quickly be in the same key and harmonically sound. That's a quick way of getting back to basics. And over on the right, you have all these different patterns that are going to subdivide the rhythms into different note values. And you can hear the difference as you pick different ones. But ultimately, most musicians aren't going to want to have their rhythm chosen for them. That's what makes you feel like you created it. So there are ways to invent your own rhythm. And that is with the 2 hands on the top where it says paint. Because this is a screenshot, is now as little pieces are getting filled in, those are me painting them with my fingers. So a short tap will be a shorter note, and if I want a longer note, I would have to go to the hand icon right below it, right there. That's the swipe, and with that I can make a longer note, like a quarter note or a whole note. And if I want to erase that, you tap on a section again, and then the little gyroscope looking icon allows you to actually bend the shape over the pitch map here. You can also do that with your fingers in the other screen, the one that doesn't show the pitch map in the background. And it allows you to manipulate the rhythm that you've created until you have it just the way you want it. And then there's a little button on the bottom that looks like a circle with a bullseye in the middle, and that will reset it to its default. Then there's these screens, which are basically for live performance, and by swiping your fingers around like a turntable, you can speed up or slow down the pattern that you've made and alter it in real time. So you can see here when the paint icon is selected, and then I select the gyroscope, or right on the right corner of the key map, a little circle appears. That's what I pressed to bring it back to its default shape. So it immediately flipped it back right side up and put it back the way that it was. Finally, the last factor that determines rhythm is on the bottom right corner there. You see a note. That's a 32nd note or 16th note. Or if it has a 3 next to it, that means it's a triplet. As you change the value of that, you can hear the difference in what it does. It'll change the rhythm as well. So I'm changing all these different screens on the very top, and you notice next to the circle on top there's a shape, and that's your, so you can get to the moon screen, which we just passed by. And the moons don't do anything if you don't assign them to anything, those shapes. You can change the shapes just like you can change the orbits. But in the synth page where you can edit the sound, you can assign by on the left it says add controller. If you hit that, then this will happen. And then you pick which of these knobs you want to affect by the moon. And then this screen pops up and it allows you to change the range of how far you want the knob to go right and left, and whether you want to use moon 1, moon 2, or even the orbit, the original orbit, to modulate your synth. So since the screen capture is in mono, I picked pan as one of the parameters to modulate with one of the moons. You're not going to hear it pan back and forth. And all the different shapes that I pick, you're not going to hear how it differently affects the panning. So you're just going to have to try that on your own, and you'll hear what the moons do. And you can use them or not use them. So everything we've done so far was with the internal synth engine. And I haven't really shown you all the sounds it can do, but I'm trying to demystify what this program is all about. So now we're going to see how it works triggering an external synth. So I open up an instance of Cyclop. I'm going through some sounds real quick. Then I'm going to switch back over and show you the page that allows you to make that assignment, and I'll show you how to do that. So now I'm going to open up Cubasis, and assign the different instruments so that I can record them, because I'm not much of a electronic improvisationalist. I generally do this for the purpose of writing songs. So Aphellian needs to be opened up as an audio input, and then you need to make sure that inter-app sync is on, and then on the very top a little transport will appear in Aphellian with the Cubasis logo, and then I'm going to add an instance of Cyclop by Sugar Bytes, and that is added as a MIDI instrument, either audio unit or inter-app audio. And then I'm going to go back and assign Aphellian as the MIDI input and put channel 2. I'm going to go back over to Aphellian and open it up and go over to the blue instrument triangle there, and that'll open up the synth page. And then you click on the waveform next to the notes up on top. That opens up the synth page. There's two tabs on the right there. It says audio or MIDI. Audio is the internal synth engine, and for some reason my screen capture wasn't recording there, so otherwise you would have heard the internal sound engine. But right here I switched it to Aphellian, turned it on, put on channel 2, and now you should hear Cyclops coming through. Okay, so now I'm going to come up with some patterns and then assign them to external synths, mix them with the internal synth, and after I build a few patterns, then I will show you how to put them into a song in song mode. I'm not going to skip ahead, so it might be a little bit more lengthy than the watching other videos that you've seen where they just breeze through it, because I figure it'll give you a chance to kind of observe more slowly and maybe understand what's going on more than if I were to just rush through it. Okay, so here we go. Oh, and by the way, the reason that I'm recording in Cubasis at the same time is iPad screen capture only records in mono. And I figured it'd be more enjoyable to listen to this in stereo, the way it's supposed to sound. Okay, from here on out, if you think you know how to use this, don't watch the rest of this. It's just a slow version of me trotting forward with this. So anyway, if you like this tutorial, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll be doing more tutorials now on a regular basis again. Had a bunch of life crap to take care of, so that kind of kept me off the net, but I'm back, and we'll start doing some more tutorials and some short ones. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this and that it helped you figure things out.